Did he really just say that? To his bride? Whispered a guest, eyes wide in disbelief. She should be grateful. Who wouldn't want to marry into a family like mine? Laughter broke out, sharp and uncomfortable. The groom smirked, basking in the attention, while the bride stood silent, humiliated in front of hundreds. Her dignity was tested, her heritage mocked, and yet she did not falter. What Daniel never realized was that every cruel word he spoke was carving the stage for his own public downfall. This is the story of arrogance undone. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. The hall was dressed in gold and ivory, chandeliers casting their glow over polished floors, and guests murmuring with the kind of excitement only weddings bring. To everyone else, it was just another high society celebration, an elegant ceremony between two seemingly perfect lovers. But beneath the polished smiles and whispered congratulations, the seeds of tension were already planted. Amara had always lived her life balancing two worlds. On one side, she was the granddaughter of a family whose influence spanned continents, owning vast estates, global corporations, and a fortune that had been carefully protected for generations. On the other hand, she had chosen to walk humbly, working as a professor and never flaunting her wealth. She wanted to be valued for her mind, not her inheritance. When she met Daniel, she believed she had found someone who saw her for who she was, a woman, not a name or a bank account. Daniel, charming and ambitious, painted himself as devoted. Friends admired his wit, family welcomed his confidence, and Amara allowed herself to believe his affection was genuine. He never asked about her family, never probed into her background, and she saw that as refreshing. But there were cracks in the image, offhand jokes he made about her heritage, subtle remarks when they were alone, and moments when his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Now, as she walked down the aisle, her heart carried both hope and a quiet unease. The guests rose, the music swelled, and Daniel stood waiting. His suit was perfect, his posture proud, but there was something in his expression, something sharp, almost mocking, that made Amara pause for just a heartbeat. The day should have been the beginning of a lifelong bond. Instead, it was about to become a stage where love, prejudice, and arrogance collided, because what Daniel didn't know was this: he wasn't the only one holding a secret. The ceremony began with the usual rituals, vows, promises, and the carefully orchestrated smiles of two people who were supposed to be stepping into forever. Yet for those watching closely, there were flickers of unease. Daniel's tone carried a sharp edge, his words rehearsed but hollow. Amara's voice trembled slightly, though she steadied herself with grace. As the reception unfolded, the atmosphere shifted. Laughter echoed across the decorated hall, champagne glasses clinked, and the dance floor filled with guests celebrating the union. But at the head table where the bride and groom sat, an invisible tension simmered. Daniel leaned into the microphone for his wedding speech, eyes scanning the crowd with the confidence of someone eager to impress. What began as a typical toast quickly twisted. He praised himself for rescuing Amara from what he called a modest life, slipping in comments about her background that drew awkward chuckles from a few and uncomfortable silence from others. He joked about her small-town upbringing, her different culture, and even hinted that she should be grateful to have married into a family like his. Each word landed like a sting, masked under laughter but sharp enough to cut. Amara sat frozen, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had heard his jokes before, but never so public, never so cruel. Whispers rippled through the room as guests exchanged uneasy glances. Some laughed nervously, others looked down, unsure how to respond. Daniel continued, emboldened by the silence. The humiliation wasn't just personal, it was racial. His words carried the weight of centuries of stereotypes, dismissing her heritage as something lesser. He spoke with arrogance, oblivious to the storm building in the eyes of those who knew the truth. Because among the guests were business magnates, philanthropists and dignitaries, people who weren't merely friends of Amara's family, but partners in ventures that Daniel could only dream of touching. Yet he carried on, blind to the glances, too caught up in his performance. He ended his speech with a smirk, raising his glass high. The applause that followed was hesitant, scattered, and hollow. Amara stood slowly, her expression composed but her silence louder than words. She thanked the guests with calm dignity, shifting the focus back to gratitude and love. Yet the atmosphere had already cracked, the glow of celebration dimmed by Daniel's arrogance. As the evening carried on, the tension only thickened. Guests whispered in corners, some outraged, others curious. Did he really say that? Does he not know who her family is? How could he embarrass her like that? The murmurs spread like wildfire, feeding the suspense of what was yet to come. Daniel, oblivious, basked in the attention. He believed he had charmed the room, that his confidence made him stand taller. In reality, he had dug himself into a pit of disgrace, one his bride had not yet chosen to expose. The night pressed on with dancing and celebration, but beneath the surface, something far more powerful brewed. Amara remained poised, but every guest who caught her eye knew she was not a woman defeated. She was a storm waiting for its moment. And when that moment arrived, Daniel would realize his mistake. Not just the error of his words, but the mistake of underestimating the woman he thought he owned. The music faded as the evening reached its peak, and a hush fell across the hall when Amara finally rose to speak. Guests straightened in their seats, sensing that something important was about to unfold. Daniel leaned back with a smug smile, expecting his bride to offer thanks or perhaps a sweet tribute to him. What came instead silenced the room. Amara began softly, her voice steady but laced with power. She thanked the guests for coming, for celebrating love, and for standing by her family for generations. Then her words shifted. She spoke of heritage, of strength, of dignity passed down through bloodlines that had endured centuries of struggle and triumph. The audience leaned in, caught between awe and unease. Then came the reveal. With calm precision, she named the companies her family owned, enterprises worth billions, estates across continents, charities that had rebuilt communities. Murmurs spread like shockwaves through the hall. Eyes widened. Heads turned, and Daniel's smirk vanished, because in that moment he realized the truth. The woman he mocked, belittled, and humiliated was not the one being elevated by marrying him. It was the other way around. He was the one who had been given a chance he had destroyed with arrogance. The weight of silence pressed against him, every eye now judging, every whisper condemning. And Amara, standing tall in her gown, became a vision not of shame, but of power. His humiliation was complete. The room erupted, not with applause, but with stunned silence broken only by the rustle of whispers. Daniel's face, once smug, had drained of color. The man who believed he was marrying into power now realized he had been standing beside it all along. Guests who once chuckled at his crude remarks now looked at him with thinly veiled disgust. Business partners who had politely tolerated him turned their backs, unwilling to associate with his arrogance. Amara did not need to raise her voice or expose her pain. Her presence alone carried more weight than any insult ever could. She stood tall, radiating dignity, embodying the truth that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. The very fortune Daniel had mocked her for not having was the one that dwarfed his family's name and secured generations of influence far beyond his reach. In that moment, the wedding transformed. It was no longer a celebration of love. It became a lesson, a mirror reflecting the ugliness of prejudice. Guests would speak of it for years, not because of the glamour, but because of the justice delivered in silence and poise. Daniel sat small in his chair, his earlier words echoing back like shackles. He had mocked what he did not understand, ridiculed what he could never possess. And Amara had answered not with anger but with truth. Her story became a reminder to all. Racism cloaked in jokes and arrogance can never diminish true worth. It only exposes the emptiness of the one who wields it. And as the night ended, the question hung heavy in the air. How many more Daniels would the world endure before learning to see dignity, not difference?